Now, ahead of the International Day of Peace that is marked every 21st of September, we spoke to Mr Fode Ndiaye, the UN resident coordinator in Rwanda, about, among other things, the role the United Nations plays in working to maintain international peace and security. You're very much welcome today.
Thank you, Gloria Mutesi.
Now, as we battle with the coronavirus pandemic, we know that armed conflict around the world is still ravaging. And earlier this year, the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, called for a ceasefire to end all the hostilities. How significant was this call, and how far is it manifesting?
Thank you. I first want to say that the Secretary General launch is called in March. And it took 111 days after the COVID-19 has been declared by the WHO as a pandemic to get to the Security Council to adopt the resolution on ceasefire, which is an important milestone because you know the resolution are binding to member states. Of course, the resolution was very clear that it should exclude the fights against terrorist group like ISIS and Daesh and other elements. But we are seeing progress in Yemen, and you see also that in Libya there was some talk ongoing, and many countries are really supporting this ceasefire. Of course, UN is confronted by the fact that in some conflict you have non-state actors, which of course is difficult to find the right ways, but UN is trying, as we are doing in Yemen and other areas of the world.
Of course, this year's theme is shaping peace together, and this is the kind of call to action that is such an inspiring phase, especially in this time when we are facing unprecedented times. What do you think is the key to achieving this theme?
Peace needs to be grounded on justice and equal opportunities for all citizens. It should be grounded on inclusion and fights against discrimination, exclusion, racism. But this fight is not the fight only of the UN. That's why the Secretary General in the same call on youth, women, academia, and all the citizens to put together their efforts. The Secretary General also called on all the member states to make sure that this ceasefire should be a momentum to come and reflect together in these fights against COVID-19. Because we all know that no one will be safe unless all we are safe.
Of course, this ceasefire was called upon when the entire world were all facing a common enemy, which is the coronavirus pandemic. How has it contributed to international tensions and exacerbated the already formidable peace and security challenges that we're already seeing?
I think it has made some elements of our work difficult because, you know, in many countries you have elections, and of course, you want to say to your population that you are catering for them. So nationalism is rising. In some areas even we have racism, which is rising. But I think the call of the Secretary General, and supported by some other member states, and the resolution I mentioned earlier of the Security Council, create an environment of putting our efforts together.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, this day, the International Day of Peace, was unanimously adopted by all member states of the United Nations. But how come we're still seeing some of these countries who were part of adopting this day still partaking in wars and hostilities, even in their own countries?
Yeah. I think that it comes, in my humble view, to leadership. That's why for the decade of action, the Secretary General said, call on government for a smarter leadership, mobilizing more resources to unleash the potential of their people and fight against inequalities and corruption. But he also called on youth, academia, private sector, and all the people to make sure that their voices are heard at country level and globally, and they support the fights that we are seeing. Last point, which is important in that matter, I think that inequalities within countries are really a trigger of some elements of division and discrimination. And it is on the shoulders of citizens to fight inequalities and corruption and fight for deepening democracy and accountable governance to make sure that we have social cohesion in a given country based on inclusion and the fact that everyone could have a better life.
Of the role of the United Nations, how does the UN maintain this international peace and security? Yes, you said it doesn't influence the citizens, but what is its particular role, for instance, in terrorism, in preventing all this nationalism and everything that's happening?
UN is doing it through various ways. First, holding government around international commitment like the Charter, because the Charter is very clear. We need international cooperation and peace to solve dispute among countries, not war. And of course, we have managed for the last 75 years to prevent the world from having a third world war. That's really a great achievement of the UN. Now, the second thing that the UN is doing is supporting framework that are making sure that we have societies that are more cohesive, like the Sustainable Development Goal, where we are catering for the people, the planet, prosperity, and peace. And in 2015, government has signed off on that. So UN, in every single country, we are supporting national actors in order to implement that. That encompasses peace and prosperity for all. Third element, and I want to congratulate Rwanda here, because Rwanda is a top performer on providing peacekeeping forces globally. Fifth element is really how we support regional integration, cross-border initiative. Like in Rwanda, we are supporting the government in regional integration, competitiveness, to really position this country in the African continental free trade area. Because where you have prosperity, people will not have time to really take the arms and fight together. They need to focus on investment in access, education, equal opportunities, economic opportunities, building regional integration. And in that matter, UN is partnering with the African Union. We have a strong cooperation, and both President Moussa Faki Mahamat and Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, have signed a framework. And one element of the framework is really how we prevent conflict and sustain peace.
Absolutely. Many thanks indeed, Mr. Fode Ndiaye, today.
Thank you so much
All right.
for having me.
All right.